Okay, folks, I'm going to call the, first of all, I'm going to call the closed council meeting to order, and then I'll recess it until after all the open meetings. And I'll call the open general purposes committee meeting to order. For all the meetings, we've got Councillor Day, Councillor Galanders, who are away for different reasons, and we'll need a resolution to allow them to attend. May I have that resolution? Second. Discussion, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Motion on the minutes? Discussion, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Then we have the phasing options for the public camera system. Yeah, Douglas Liu, anything to add to your report? Oops, just a minute. There you go. Say that again. Just a minute. Oh, we turned on the other one.
I can switch. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Staff has nothing to add to the report, and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
Someone want to move it? Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of questions. First off, what kind of signage will need to be put up for the testing time?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the signage will be the same signage identifying the privacy impact assessment. I think all the major intersections in the city already has signage that depicts video recording is established at these intersections.
Thanks. Then just to follow up on that, it does say on that GP 59 that contact information will be provided for the manager, the senior person. So does that mean at those intersections, your name and your office phone number will be on those signs?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the contact would, I believe, would be Transportation Department.
Okay. And
That's based on existing signage.
So not a name of a person, because it says contact information of a manager or senior person? So will it be a department name or a person's name?
That's correct.
A department's name?
Yeah, that department.
Okay, thanks. My next question, in regards to the cost, so originally the cost for the full implementation of the public safety camera system was going to be $6.55 million. Today we're considering phase one or an option that's phase one and phase two, which doesn't include the full scale. That would be even more. So what would you say is the big difference between the original total cost of $6.55 million to the new total cost of $13 million? What was all the added cost?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the cost was revised based on the manufacturer's expert opinions and also assessment based on software modeling. The original cost estimate was based on one PTRZ camera and one multi-sensor. Based on the software modeling, that the level of cameras is insufficient to capture because it is a passive system and is not actively monitored. For an active system, for a passive system to capture legitimately the license plates or person's face, it will require a minimum of 4 cameras per intersections. For a more complex intersection, it will require approximately 6 cameras.
Thanks. And then a follow-up on that, on our page 15, it adds some things that weren't in this report the last time, where it might be a combination of bullet, multi-sensor, and pan, tilt, zoom, roll style cameras. That's new, right? The different style of cameras?
For the chair to Councillor Wolf, that's accurate, yes. There are different type of cameras.
Okay, so those were not considered before. And this continues to be a program that would not be used for scanning information on fires or emergencies that happen outside the intersection. It's still set for camera angles catching the license plates and faces. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the angles would be set pointing the direction of the road, and the main objective is to capture license plates and also nearby pedestrians.
Great, and then I read that some of the cameras, the new style of cameras would be able to be moved around so the angle can change, so they're not stationary at just getting the angle of the intersection that they were set at. Next thing, it mentioned that this new total of 8 cameras, for example, for some intersections, or 6, whatever the higher number is. The increase in bandwidth requirement, networking equipment, servers, data storage requirement, is that a significant contribution to the nearly doubling of this program? Is it, like, I'm not aware of what that kind of stuff costs, but I'm assuming that's pretty substantial.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, yes, that's accurate.
Okay, thank you. I think your worship, I just have one more question, I think. 2 more, sorry.
One more.
One more, this would be a big one then. So on page 16, it mentions that none of these phasing options would include intersections on Sea Island because that's federal jurisdiction. At our last discussion on this, we talked a lot about the reason for this being brought forward is a shooting that happened at an RCMP officer at the airport, and we would have caught them if we had cameras. Do we know where YVR and the airport and the federal government is? Because if they want, they can take the whole cost of this program away from us, and they can put cameras on their side of the bridge. Have you been in contact with what they plan to do?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, yes, we have contacted the Vancouver Airport Authority. They do currently have their own security monitoring system that's restricted to the aerodrome and outside surrounding the aerodrome.
And their side of the bridges too, like their side of Two Road Bridge, their side of Moraes Bridge, their side of...
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, there's existing traffic camera system that has been installed on Sea Island.
Not this type of camera though. Okay.
All right, Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, just quickly, I just want to follow up on the signage that is going to be put up. Is it going to be distinct and a consistent distance away from the intersection to know that there are surveillance cameras up there? And will that be done throughout the whole 10 areas?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, yes. The signage in relation to the intersection is very, very close. So drivers or people crossing the intersection would have noticed that there are signage.
And just for public's information, we're going to go with phase 1 because I see these signs as more than just what we're doing. I think it's going to be a tremendous opportunity to reduce some other things. How long will we keep phase 1 in before we look to phase 2?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, staff estimate at this time phase 1 would take approximately 12 to 18 months implementation time from procurement to actual operational phase. That's in addition to the field testing. So the field testing takes around 6 to 12 months and is to test the effectiveness for different type of weather scenarios and the speed of vehicles, whether it will be legitimately captured the license plates.
Okay, in addition to Burkeville, just quickly, East Richmond seems to be, what I call East Richmond seems to be negligent in terms of, on what I've got on our page 17, the 10 intersections. And I'm talking about East Richmond, not 6th Road. That's not East Richmond. Beyond 6th Road.
Yeah.
And Westminster Highway or wherever.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor McNulty, East Richmond has been recommended by the Richmond RCMP to be under phase 2. So there will be 3 intersections that will be covered under phase 2 in East Richmond.
Yeah, I just want to be noted as well that we haven't done. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Heed.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up on that one particular point there, I think it's important for us to realize we're depending on the RCMP on the location of these cameras based on their expertise in this particular area. And I think we have to stay away from the operational aspect of it. And I think Mr. Liu would probably agree with me on that. Certainly our general counsel would agree with me on this. I think we're the leaders in this particular area, and I think given the mayor's work he's done on this and the frustrations he's had previously in trying to deal with this, and the fact that our solicitor has worked very hard in ensuring that this is done in an appropriate fashion. So my credit to staff for doing this. it's important to remember that these cameras are a deterrence, and we're looking at it to be proactive. If you'll notice, Vancouver is going to follow our lead and try and do it themselves. Hopefully there's some synergy that we can build up on there, because at the end of the day, we want to prevent incidents from occurring at the outset. However, when the criminal activity does take place and there's a significant incident, we want to ensure that we provide any resources available for our enforcement officials to make sure that the perps are apprehended and dealt with throughout our court system that we have here. And for Councillor Wolf's information, the YVR was an example that we used on the shooting that took place there, and there's a fair amount of video within the airport area. But I think importantly is where the suspect shot at the police officer on our side of the Morey Bridge on Sea Island Way at number 3 Road. So I am absolutely an unyielding supporter of this type of public safety security for the people that live, work, and play in Richmond. And I certainly thank staff for all the effort in moving this forward for our perusal. Thank you.
Yeah, just on that note as to who else is doing this, the most recent contact we had was also from White Rock. They're talking about along their beach having some kind of a similar situation, so working together. Councillor Al.
Yes, sure. Now, even if staff recommend option 1, the cost is still quite big, right? $2.4 million for capital. So, and I think this number came out from the recommendation or consultation with the 3 camera manufacturers and 2 video management vendors. So is this number kind of a hard number, or is it a soft number? That means, you know, it can go up or down?
Through the chair to Councillor Al, this number is an estimate. When we go out to tender, then we'll have an idea of the actual cost based on the bids.
Okay, in that case, are you recommending that we cap it at 2.493 million? Actually, if it won't go up, but it can be further down.
Through the chair to Councillor Al, this is our best estimates at this time.
Okay, good. Thank
Yeah, that's part of the budget
Okay.
process. Councillor Galanders has a question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Pardon my voice. I do have a question. The recommended option to phase in phase 1 and 2, would that then, is that the ultimate goal then, is to have phase 1 and 2 eventually done, so the 96 cameras for 3.7 million? Or would the ultimate goal to install all 567 cameras for the 13 million?
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, right now the goal is to assess the effectiveness of the new camera system. So staff would want to phase them in and reassess and make adjustments and allow technologies to improve and hope so that in future investments it would be lowering in costs.
On GP 14, where it states the 4 points that were in the referral from January 15th, the resolution that council adopted on January 15th. The second point there was the feasibility of obtaining a court declaration in advance of the expenditures so that we know we're going to be able to do this.
That's a matter for the
Yeah.
closed meeting.
I know that. And what I'm asking is there anything about that can be made public so the public understands the implications of approving this money now?
You can ask that question in closed.
So the public has no way of knowing what the implications are,
I didn't say that. I said you can ask the question in closed.
and the public won't hear the answer. Okay. Okay.
All right?
Has this been moved and seconded now?
Yes, it has.
Okay, so I would just make my comment then that I think that we are obligated to operate independently of the police. That is a court order for municipalities. I know that we provide space for the police. We provide the the office space, et cetera, but we don't ourselves purchase the weapons for the police. We don't ourselves purchase the software, the forensics,
Yes, we do.
the computer systems.
Sorry,
That would be
Councillor
working with the
Galanders.
police.
Councillor Galanders, we purchase all of that. We get the bills, we have to pay them.
Guns, the cars, the
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Everything.
if that's what the police did and they submitted us a bill, if the police were gonna be implementing the cameras and submitting us a bill, then we would look at that. But I think that having the police recommend that we do spend this money to install cameras for them to use, I don't feel is operating independently of the police.
All right.
So I think I'm going to be voting. And also just one more comment is that when we did discuss the 6.5 million that the initial entire plan was going to encapsulate, I said I could be supportive of 1 or 2 cameras to start, perhaps just at the tunnel, just at the 91 by the Alex Fraser, for example. So if the testing was just for 1 or 2 cameras, and then we see how that works, and it was for far less money, I could support that. But 10 cameras for 2.5 million at this time, I cannot support that.
Councillor Day, you've got a question? I'm not hearing from Councillor Day, so I'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Those opposed? It is carried with Councillors Wolf and I assume Councillor Galander is opposed.
Yes, thank you.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. Okay, we're now adjourned, and I'm going to call to order the Open Finance Committee. So first of all, may I have the same resolution regarding the virtual attendance? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Now, for those of you from the public who are here, we're not planning at this meeting to have any delegations. There will be ample opportunity for the delegations to attend and to make presentations. First of all, if the budget matters go forward, you can delegate next week at council, but also there's a formal period of public input into our budget. So tonight, I think we're going to have our hands full with a lot of different staff making comments on various aspects of the various budgets. So may I have a motion on the minutes? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Then the first one is for the public library. Susan, is there any comment you want to make on your report?
No, through the chair. I do not have anything to add to the report, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Someone want to move it? So it's moved and seconded. Councillor Wolf.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just a question, unless it's a trade secret you don't want to give up, but we have a municipal contribution per capita that's 26% below the average. So we're at $52 as opposed to the average, which is about $70. And we also have the longest operating hours of any library in Greater Vancouver. How do we accomplish that?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf. That's one of the things that we've been able to do over the years. All budgets are a little bit different. So for example, in Richmond, we have 2 libraries that are in city-owned facilities, and we have 2 libraries that are in lease properties. So that will impact the difference in budgets for sure, but for us, it is being able to standardize our staffing schedules across all 4 locations. So we have different shifts, but 3 of them, and we have been able to do that with our staffing and the support that we get from council to provide those services. So you'll see over those 20 years, it's been steady growth, and that's been really, really helpful for us to be able to provide those services to our community.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Councillor McNulty.
Thanks very much. Councillor Wolf took those words right out of my mouth. you know, the library is our heart and soul, and we ranked 8th, and it's something, and our staff, I thought I gave a referral on this, following up the per capita, and my comment is, what would the impact be of increasing the per capita even in stages, since we're way down the line? Is there an outstanding referral on that? Because I'd like, if not, I'd like us to look at that to see what the impact is, given the libraries that we've got. Yes, no? Okay, well, I'm gonna.
Well, let her answer.
Yeah, so through your worship to Council McNulty, there isn't an outstanding referral on that. I did want to bring back this information from last year. And I think that what we are able to do with the funding that we get from council is pretty magnificent for our community, right? We've got the longest operating hours. We're able to, right now, we're realizing, and you see this in this report, we're realizing the benefits of the enhancement grant funding to support some of those services too, without having to make additional asks of council at this time.
Okay, well, thank you for that. You can keep your budget below 5%, at 4.5%. I'm wondering, given the nature down the road, that we're going to have Steveston on board, and I think that will be a very well-drawn library in terms of the community. I think we're going to get a bit of a surprise down there with its usage and what it can be offered. Okay, well, maybe more to come on that later. Thank you.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for this report. I appreciate the work that the library does. I'm certainly a heavy user of it. I haven't taken the cricket courses yet to try and figure out how to do those, but you know, we go in, the kids can play chess, we can get books. I've always been able to either get what I'm looking for or put it as a request, and eventually it filters through, and enough other people seem to want the same book, so I eventually am able to get my hands or my ears on those books. So I appreciate what it does. So I don't know about Councillor McNulty, but I think the service you're giving right now is excellent. And so I don't know that we necessarily need to be changing how much we're doing per person. But I would be curious to know if there was a miss, because my sense of going to the library on a regular basis is people are able to get books in a variety of languages. They're able to get the resource materials they need and have access to what they want and what they're looking for.
Yeah, and through your worship to Councillor Liu, you'll see this year that we are taking some money out of our accumulated surplus and putting that towards print materials, because what we're noticing this year is we're seeing a 20% at a minimum increase over last year. So this year we've already had over 1 million visitors to our library, and we've circulated 2.7 million items already this year. So what we're having to do is balance that budget for collections, but we're able to do that, and we're able to be quite nimble in responding to customer needs, because what we do is ensure that we're building a collection that meets the needs of the community. So we are a popular reading collection, and we are able to lean into other libraries through interlink lending to be able to pull materials that we might not have because they're not in demand all the time by everyone in our community.
Okay, and a follow-up question. You recently got rid of fines on books, and so I noticed that if you take out a book, it'll just automatically renew it for a couple times, and then it'll give you a warning and say that you're not going to be allowed to get anything else out of the library until you return that book and bring it back. Have you noticed any issues of turnover of books since this?
Yeah. Through your worship to Councillor Liu, we have not noticed any issues with books not being returned. People really appreciate the no fines, especially in these times, and they appreciate being able to have that extra renewal if no one else is asking for the item. So we find all our materials are coming back. We're not suffering, like I think that's a misconception that when you go fine free, the books will not come back to the library. They're definitely coming back, and then they're available for someone to borrow. And if you have something out, even if it extends it, if someone puts a hold on it, that's when it's going to get called back. I think you get 2 additional renewals.
Thank you.
Councillor Heath.
Yes, very quickly, I just want to point out, we're talking about less than 10% on everything else. It's 90% of the budget is the cost driver is labor. So you've got $445,000, I believe, going forward. Is the majority of that for your union employees, or are we talking about exempt employees? Or can you give me a breakdown? If not, just later on, providing that would be fine.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Heed, this goes towards all employees, unionized as well as exempt employees. But also within there, I do want to point out that we do have, we are putting 235,000 from our enhancement grant into staffing this year as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susan. With that, we'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And for those who are coming in virtually, I'll assume that you are in favor of these motions unless you so designate. That brings us to the capital budget. So Jerry and company, what can you tell us here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to point out that it's in your report that the capital budget is $152,581,457. And there's 78 projects. The biggest one is infrastructure, 63 million with 46 projects. And just wanted to point out, compared to the 2024 capital budget, in comparison was 210 million, but included in that capital budget last year was 70 million for the works yard project. So taking that out, it was 140 million. So this capital budget is quite similar to last year's, a little bit bigger. We have all the project stakeholders here to answer any questions on specific projects, and finance staff are also here to answer any questions.
All right, anything more to add? At this point, we'll just go to questions?
Yes.
All right, we'll start with Councillor Heed.
Thank you, Mayor. Just, you mentioned the works yard, and we know that's a significant capital cost. And in your report, I recall reading somewhere where last year we looked at phase one, the initial costs. This year wasn't a great impact simply because we're still part of phase one. But in 2026, we have a significant impact on the capital budget. Can you just comment briefly on that? Because I guess I'm trying to do some potential problem analysis and maybe dividing it up.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, that's correct. Council previously approved 100 million for the phase one of the works yard project because it is a significant project and it's going to be phased over 10 years. So a lot of planning. And then next year, I believe we have set aside 50 million for phase two of that project. So it's not only managing the phasing and the capital costs, but also the cash flow.
So there's nothing contributed on capital costs for the works yard project for 2025?
There, through the chair to Councillor Heed, there has been some costs incurred. I think it's a couple, 2 or 3 million, but those are design costs and that. But further costs will come as the project advances.
Mr. Irving, you gave us a memo on that just today or on Friday. Just tell us about that.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, we're providing the monthly memo as per council direction, and I believe GM of Finance is correct. The current expenditure is in about the $3 million range. We are preparing to come back to council with scoping and program options for phase one early in the new year, in the first quarter, and through that we'll be presenting several options for whether we scope something more closely to what was originally envisioned in the site selection work for phase one, or whether there's opportunities to add to phase one and what have you. And we'll have updated cost estimates there. But with the funding provided in phase one, the 100 million, that will actually be expended likely over a 4 to 5 year period as we move through that construction, and may ultimately overlap with a phase 2 or 3 as we bring those options forward to council.
All right.
For now, thank you.
Yeah, and just, you're probably interested in your suggestion of an oversight committee. Apparently that report is coming next, GP, in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Your Worship, just a couple of questions on some of the specific projects. So the three of them that are kind of all in the parks program that are not recommended for funding, I'm just curious, have any of these three been considered for like grants? Are we waiting for some other funding source? So that's the page, Fin 139 is the description of the McDonald Beach Boat Basin Dredging Program. I was just curious because I know there's contract talk with other levels of government to maybe do that. So I don't know, is there other funding we might wait for there? The Park Shelter and Shade Program, is there perhaps like climate mitigation funding or something? And then the Trail Network Enhancement, all these pages 139, 140, 141 are the descriptions of the projects. And they all seem like valuable projects to get going on. So I just like the delay, if you could comment on that.
Okay, just a minute, we'll turn your mic on. Okay.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the one program we have been kind of working on is the McDonald Beach dredging program. You'll recall we brought a report forward earlier on the overall dredging program. We did identify that this project would come forward for 2025 capital funding. Since that time, the federal government has come to the table with their partnership matching dollars. So there is potential opportunity within that portfolio and with some of our older carry forward dollars to be reallocated to this. In the interim, we will be working on the planning and potential permitting preparation for this one. The other two projects, the Shade and Shelter Program and the Trail Enhancement Program, we have not applied for any grants. The Shade Program really is due to climate change, either from a shade perspective and or inclement weather. But the Trail Network one, also within the recommended list this year, is the Crown Packaging Trail, and that is our priority, and so that's why that one is front and forward.
Great. So then, just to clarify, then those three projects that you just recommended, they basically get bumped a year, right?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thanks. And my last question, sorry, last page here, is just in the 5-year portion. Sorry, this one here. On page 149, it's in the big Appendix 13 spreadsheet there. There's in the top section on 149, it says habitat offsetting, and that's pushed to 2027. I guess that would be 1.5 million, I think. Yeah. So is there any comments on that? So if we're needing habitat offset, are we documenting that, recording that, and then we'll get to making the expenditures to do the work and do the restoration work then? Or do we start documenting the habitat that needs to be offset at that time? So I just want to know, have we already started the documenting, and that's when we start spending to do the work?
Okay, who can comment on that?
Documenting it at the moment, and as the flood mitigation projects begin, the funding would be required in future years.
Okay, then just to follow up on that, it's just set right now as an expense for that 1 year. Would it not be ongoing once we start doing it? Wouldn't it have multi-year?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, that's correct.
Oh, okay, thanks.
All right, Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair. First, thanks again for a very comprehensive report that lays things out pretty clearly. Just a couple questions and comments. First of all, with the flood protection plan, can you just comment on the impact that grants might have on specific projects or in general, because there's a 27.5 million, and then also we might apply for grants, and in a typical year that would impact that, how?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs. This year, there's no grant funding that has been secured. Staff are always looking for opportunities to secure grant funding from senior government or any other organizations. So if we are successful, then a separate report will be brought forward to offset the funding that is in this proposed report.
All right, thanks. I know staff's very good at seeking out those type of grants. Next is on Fin 23, it identifies 60.3% of the funding by reserves. So it's the sources of funding for different projects. So it does demonstrate the importance of various reserves. And can you just quickly comment for, mostly for the public, because I know everybody here has read it, but the impact that that has?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, the reserves are a method of self-funding or self-financing these projects. In the past, Richmond had to rely on debt that time because they didn't have enough funds available for certain projects. And so council approved the long-term financial management strategy to set aside the 1% for building projects. And I guess also in the past years, the utility budget has been successful in setting up annual transfers to reserves. And that's why you see a healthy capital program to ensure that infrastructure is replaced and repaired as needed.
Yeah, thanks. Just the long-term financial management strategy, I think, is really important, and those all tie into that, and it allows us to do things. Just a couple more questions or points through the chair. Appendix 5 on FIN 37, where it talks about significant items. There are a couple of fairly big items when it comes to repairs and renewals and part of our 167 facilities, right? But can you just talk about the importance of that in terms of, for instance, the curling rink or the ice rink? Because in my mind, when we acquired those, there might be some safety issues. There might be some repairs that weren't done in the past years before we acquired them. So is it that there's a very important timeline to get out in front of those things that have maybe lagged in the past, since now we're responsible for those buildings?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, for both Richmond Ice Centre and the Richmond Curling Club, we came to council when we acquired Richmond Ice Centre. We had phase plan, so we will not impact operations to improve it. During this time, there are a number of systems that have also reached end of life, and we are replacing them. For the Richmond Curling Club, when council decided to take it on as part of the city as a city facility, we also had phased in year by year to actually repair the Richmond Curling Club. We are now at phase 3 of the Richmond Curling Club from the original report that we came to council in 2021.
Yeah, thank you. That's the kind of planning that I think helps us financially as well. Just one more thing through the chair, if you don't mind, and I just want to mention in Appendix 9, one of the neat projects that I actually came across it because we had a power outage at City Hall when we left a meeting. I was driving through an intersection and I noticed, oh, the traffic lights are working. And in my past, that hasn't always happened. So it's that uninterruptible power supply for traffic lights. And I don't have a question on that one. I just think it's an excellent project, and not all cities do that. So what it does, it keeps the power on and the traffic lights, so you don't have cars driving through unbeknownst to one another and having either a serious or even a fatal collision. And that's it for me, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thank you very much for laying out the capital budget the way you have laid it out. It's very understandable and very important that we can understand without the idea of repeating. But I just want a quick question, because it's an $8 million question with the curling rink and the ice center. Have we looked at the longevity of those and the life end of those buildings before we have a total replacement?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, yes, we have completed building assessments on both, and the structures themselves are still sound. Good. So the interior improvements for the systems, they are just aged from the 1990s, and we have to replace these systems.
Okay, so good. No, it's good to hear. Okay, thank you. Just a couple more comments, Your Worship. Continue looking at this budget, and also the other is the aspect of safety. In the flood protection and dike improvements, which I always say we never put enough money into it, we can always put more and move ahead, because instead of 50 years, I'd like to have had 30 years, but we lost that vote. We're going to only put $11 million approximately in flood protection. Does that mean we're going to raise some, page 33, sorry, the first appendix 3, the fifth item down, sixth item down. I guess my question is, are we going to start raising some other areas of the dike in Richmond? given for flood control. I support it 100%. I wish we could go faster. But you only have a certain amount of payment. So and if we are, where?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, I'd have to ask one of the managers from the other end to come in for the specific locations. I know right now we're looking at the South Dike between number 4 and 5 Road, and the North Dike in East Richmond is also in the early planning stages at this point.
Okay, all right, well, that's excellent. I support that 100%, and I thank you for doing that. We can't do enough. As Councillor Heath said, we're the leader in some areas. Well, we're a leader in this in the Metro Vancouver, let me tell you. I sit on the climate committee and knowing what other communities are doing or not doing, and we are. So good on you. Your worship, in the page 35, we're looking at, in terms of fire vehicles, we're going to put $5 million back in there so we can, to me, that's a critical expenditure and a critical placement of money. So that we can be right up front in terms of safety in our communities that come out there. That's important. Just a couple of other short ones, Your Worship, because everybody will cover it all. The Britannia shipyards, we got $11 million. When are we going to finish that project? I'm sorry, maybe you stay up here.
When are we going to finish it?
Well, get the roof done, the envelope, et cetera. Saying no, net love.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we have phased also Britannia into several phases, as Council knows. And this is our third or fourth submission for Britannia. Council have already given approval to replace the roof. Now we're looking at the envelope and the piles that have deteriorated on the building. We are planning on starting the roof by the end of or the third quarter of next year, and we are hoping for it to coincide with the other buildings or the other work that's happening on site, so we will not impact operations.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good. Just a quick question on the Hugh Boyd Community Playground. The renewal is $1.5 million. Is this a standard cost to redo playgrounds? And I'm wondering, given, although it's a secondary school, so it wouldn't be a secondary school, but if we were to do this at an elementary school, is this the kind of cost we're talking about?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, for this size of playground, location, et cetera, this is fairly standard comparatively. Steveson, our budget is $2.2 million. If this was a smaller neighborhood playground, you're probably more like $250,000 to $500,000. It does vary significantly on location, use, et cetera.
Okay, well, while you're here, you probably answer. Down there, we've got $800,000 for only 4 pickleball courts. I'm assuming with the 9 they have, it would take them to 13. Will that $800,000 go further? Can we squeeze more courts in for that?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we're always looking for ways to be creative. The challenge with this is just that there's a lot of infrastructure. The way we are able to squeeze this one is the location. It is close proximity to existing electrical, sanitary, et cetera. So parking, so we are able to provide more with less in this location.
So, and I understand they're going in the tennis courts?
No, these are brand new.
Brand new, yeah. Adjacent to the tennis courts there.
Through the chair, correct.
Okay, that's good. It's a pity we can't afford more at this time on it, so I appreciate that. That's all from me now, Your Worship.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair. Sorry to belabor the pickleball thing, but it seems expensive. Like, it seems to me we were able to build that pump track that seemed to have a lot more stuff going on it and work and complication for a lot less money. And 4 pickleball courts basically fits on 1 tennis court, so is it gold?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, there is a lot of components to a pickleball court. Sound attenuation is very critical. We need the right location. We need the proximity to amenities. And then this does have very specific surfacing, specific fencing, lighting, et cetera, all which come at a higher dollar value than your typical park amenity.
Okay, and so originally I thought we were going to put 9 there. Was it not there, or was it throughout Richmond was the original thought?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, the original intention was to do all 9 in one location. Yeah.
Okay, and it doesn't seem to be phased, because if I look further down onto Fin 153, it talks about the pickleball court construction. It says it's not recommended for the following year to add any more. And if we look along on Fin, whatever it is, 151, on pickleball court construction, it only includes 800,000 for next year. So it doesn't show us even phasing it. So is it just dying on the vine, or what can we do to help this along?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, it was part of the process of reviewing this with the new DCC ACC process that staff are currently working through. There may be some opportunities for us to bring the remaining courts through that avenue, so that's why we did not identify it. Obviously, depending on direction this afternoon, this evening, we will be adjusting our 5-year plan in the years going forward.
Okay, because it seems to be a really growing one. We got another email today from someone who was stuck in some crazy fight over at Canby for a pickleball space the other morning, and it seems like it's a growing thing. I think it's a good opportunity. We want people to be active. We're hearing from the pickleball people, there's 700 members or something, so for 800,000, you can get a whole bunch of them playing. Versus if we look at how much the curling club is, it's $4 million, and there's fewer than 300 members there. So, you know, we're spending a lot of money on a few people when something that's outdoors that has a lot less wear and tear, although I know they work really hard to wear and tear it at the pickleball, but I think our value for a dollar on pickleball courts is there, especially if we can put it somewhere like South Arm. You know, I know the courts behind McNair. I don't know how much the school uses those, but maybe that's an opportunity to put in a bunch there because the fire hall's right next to it. So I know it's owned by the school board, but it could be a partnership that we work with. I'd really like to see more of those for sure.
All right, Councillor Glanders has a question.
Sorry,
Sorry?
I have a couple more comments.
Okay,
Please,
go ahead.
thank you. A comment on just 110, the South Dike Trail. It says it's going to be 3 meters, and to go around that bend around the the old Crown paper. Is that wide enough? Is it going to be able to be delineated? I guess there's lots of people going back and forth there. We've put a lot of money into separating bikers and other people from the Bark Park, so this will be a major thoroughfare now, will it?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, currently the trail is roughly 1.5 meters in width. Our standard for multi-use is between 3.5 and 4.5 meters. So we will be within our standards for that capacity.
Okay, this will be a really great opportunity for people to bike through there. Will it have lighting too, or no?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, no.
Okay. And then the Sen net loft, you said it's 10.5 to finish that project. And then the Phoenix net loft is 16. Seems like an awfully lot of money. Should we be holding off on the Phoenix until we figure out all the little idiosyncrasies of such a large building over the water?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, we have not submitted the Phoenix in this kind of capital submission. It is in the 5-year plan. We are yet to determine the programming. We have gone out to the market and we are assessing, evaluating the designer kind of component at this stage. So we don't have a program yet to actually submit the Phoenix.
Okay, because tentatively put on for next year. So
we would update the capital plan accordingly should we come to council for approval.
Okay, thank you.
Are we finished?
Yes.
Councillor Glanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, some questions and comments. Also, yeah, I agree with the other councillors that this is really well laid out, and I appreciated the questions from the other councillors. Some of them have been answered already, so my questions are reduced. Regarding the ice center, so these improvements on some of the systems, are they going to also make them safer?
Through the chair.
You know what I mean? When there was that incident with with the leakage of the toxic, was it ammonia in Vancouver? And is it improving the safety of the systems?
Through the chair to Councillor Gillanders, all of the refrigeration systems are safe, and we have replaced the refrigeration systems and we've upgraded them. This is more of interior upgrades to the washrooms, the men's and women's and our accessible washrooms, in addition to the skate shop and some flooring and so on. This is the main aspect of this building. The refrigeration is very safe and there are no leaks. This is not the submission. This is the third or fourth phase for Richmond Ice Center. This is more about improvements and replacing the end-of-life systems.
Okay, thank you. And sort of more on the ice center, just if you will. So that's 8.5 million for this year, and then another 4 million in 2026, and then another 6 million looking at the roofs in 2028, and then more roofs in 2029. I'm just noticing the Gateway Theatre mechanical and HVAC renewal isn't going to happen until 2029, and I'm just wondering the urgency of that system at the Gateway. Is it okay to wait until 2029, and the ice center roofs are going to be more urgent?
Through the chair to Councillor Gillanders, we have completed a capital project at the Gateway Theatres replacing a number of mechanical systems 2 years ago. We have assessed the building and believe that during our assessment that the time for replacement in our systems is 2029. We do annual checks on all of our systems. Should that change, we would be coming to council to expedite that.
Okay, thank you. And I just have one more question, Your Worship, for parks, about the Hugh Boyd Park as well. I know there was already a couple questions about it, but I didn't quite answer all of my questions. My question is, how old is the park? I guess time flies, because I remember it being pretty new when my kids were using it, but is it being replaced in a typical replacement timeline regarding age? Or is it more some specifics about some things that needed to be changed, because some of the wording in the report about it was mentioning specifically accessible features and whatnot. So was it more of a community-driven urgency due to some things that weren't quite right about it?
Through the chair to Councillor Glanders, a typical playground lasts around 15 to 18 years. This playground is outside of that scope. It has deteriorated so much so that we've actually had to remove components already and do some temporary measures. The playground is also unique in the sense that it's kind of divvied up into multiple locations. The surfacing no longer meets accessibility standards. So it is a complete overhaul. It will be completely new and will meet the current standards of today.
Okay, thank you. And so, and when the South Arm Community Park was rebuilt, the South Arm Community Association contributed quite a bit of money towards that. Is West Richmond doing any sort of thing like that as well? Not that they have to, I'm just curious, because that was such a good news story when South Arm contributed to the other park.
Through the chair to Councillor Glanders, you are correct with the South Arm example. We are just in the very early stages on this one, so we will be having some collaborations with them and see where that takes us.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Al.
Yes, when I look at the 5-year plan on theme 151, I wonder whether or not we can move some of the park projects earlier. Because my feeling is that always, if we delay the projects, we have to spend more in the future. So as long as we have the money in our reserve, I wonder, for example, the Mineral Park cement track safety improvements, can we move it from 26 to 25? And also like the playground replacement program for 2026, again, can we advance it to 2025? Instead of, delaying the project, spending more in the future. And these projects is not a big item, so perhaps we can move it faster.
Through the chair to Councillor Al, I'll speak to the first item. The Clement track is, we actually have a program planned in 2025 that is recommended for planning. We have very multi-jurisdictional facility there. We have track and field, we have sport, we have recreational users. We're needing to do some analysis first to determine kind of what are our next steps. And then that's why we've identified in 2026 is actually when we would come back to do the work.
So the work won't be ready by 2025, it has to be 2026?
Correct.
Okay, good, thank you.
All right, Councillor Day has a question.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for this report. Super easy to read, and most of my questions have already been asked and answered. I was just wanted to double check on McDonald Beach. The dredging there is desperately needed, and I understand a number of boaters have been stranded. If we can't move forward with that project, then what is the plan to make sure that it's safe for boaters?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, we are starting we will be working on in 2025 the preparation for the soundings, the permitting, et cetera. That does take some time, so we will move ahead with that. And then depending on how successful we are with those, we may be able to use some of our carry forward funds to move that ahead if we're ready. If not, we will be coming back in front of council as part of the 2026 application process. In between, we are also working on improvements to the pier, the wood surfacing at the boat launch marina itself, and we are going to be looking at some messaging to the public as well.
That's the number one thing is the messaging. Thank you. And I just have one other question. I think it was Councillor McNulty brought up that there are other facilities such as school board facilities that potentially could be developed into more, in particular, pickleball courts. Is there any talks going on with the school board at this time?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, we have looked at a number of facilities and opportunities for collaboration. The biggest challenge with pickleball is we need a minimum of 100 meters setback or differentiation between the public, given the noise concerns. South Arm is one that naturally lends itself to that, but we are looking at other options. The challenge with going to other locations as well is then it does split up the costing, does split up the infrastructure, et cetera.
Okay, thank you for that.
All right, let's have a motion.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Further comments? Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will not be supporting the capital budget this time around, and I'll just outline the two reasons. First off, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, it's not the $5 million cost of the fire vehicle replacement reserve purchases, it's the funding source. So I don't see why there was any need to use the emergency response fuel facility reserve. We could have just used other sources, like every other item in here, and the equipment program costs, but we're draining $5 million out of something that was intended for something else. So that's one of the reasons I will not support it, and I don't expect people on the table to take an amendment because they were all quite committed a few weeks ago on that one. And then just an hour ago or less, we were talking about the public safety camera system, and I'm not supportive of the capital budget because it includes that, and it is just phase one of what I anticipate will be a $13 million or more total project with a very high operating budget impact going forward. So for those two reasons, I will not support the capital budget.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Worship. I will be supporting everything on the budget. However, I would like staff to provide a memo with the ways that they were talking about getting us up to the 8 or 9 courts for pickleball over on at South Arm.
All right, Councillor Galanders has a comment.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I know that the public safety cameras are in the capital budget, but I voted against the previous motion about the testing phase one of the public safety cameras. But there's a lot in the budget that the capital plan that I do want to see move forward. There's a whole lot more in here that I want to see happen in the next few years, and so I will be in support of the capital plan. In particularly, I'm very happy to see the Phoenix Net Loft program moving forward for next year, as well as a covered lacrosse box, which could be a multi-use facility by many, many different groups. Yeah, and many other things. And actually, I'm also interested in the memo that Councillor Liu mentioned about the pickleball courts, because I would like to know where future ones are going, or what we're looking at for expanding them. And, you know, I was just thinking about the Brick House lacrosse box, which isn't used for its original purpose, and it's so far away from residential areas that could be a good area for future pickleball expansion, just as an idea. But anyway, I will support the plan. Thank you.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thanks very much, Your Worship. I definitely will be supporting this budget. I think it's very comprehensive. It deals with things in the community that we need as a growing community. And I think everything that is there, we're addressing every aspect of the community, and everything from maintenance to community safety to recreation. And I think that everything is in the appropriate areas. Correct me through you to staff before I make my other comment. Just because it's listed for 26, 27, 28, it doesn't mean those projects are approved. We have not approved them. We're only approving for next year. Am I not correct?
Turn your mic on. There you go.
Yeah. Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, you are approving the 5-year financial plan, part of the 5-year plan. It's a requirement. However, staff will bring back the 2026 capital plan, and changes will be made, and of course, we'll take direction from council during the year for anything to be added or excluded.
The point I'm making, Your Worship, just because it's there, it doesn't mean to say council is going to vote for it. The council of 2026 will vote for it or against it, whatever. So it's a prototype that is there. Just another quick question. Pickleball, and we're all supporting pickleball and want to see more courts. I have an outstanding referral to look at the Jack Crosby pickleball courts from Burnaby, and it's supposed to come back within 3 months. And I'm wondering, this is the 3rd month, when will we see that? Because in that would be a dozen pickleball courts.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we do have a report or a memo almost finalized and ready to come to you either later this week or early next week.
I look forward to it. I think, and I thank staff for doing that. So anyhow, Your Worship, I will be supporting it because I think it goes this particular capital budget goes hand in glove with the OIB in terms of the regular operating budget. Thank you.
Councillor Heed.
Just a comment, Mayor. I just want to point out that there's not everything here that I agree with. But overall, I think staff has done an incredible job in putting forward our capital plan for 2025 and the prolonged 5-year capital plan. And we may not be here after 2026. We may all be voted out. But at the end of the day, I think we've got to have some vision way beyond our elected years on what we want to do here in the city of Richmond. So I don't agree with everything for 2025, but at the end of the day, I think this is a decent capital budget put forward by our staff, and I'm supporting it. And we can study the death of pickleball courts for years and years. It's $800,000. We've agreed to it. Let's move forward. Thank you.
All right, we'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried with Councillor Wolf opposed. That brings us to the operating budget. So Jeremy and Mike and, Ms. Luss, wish to address us on this?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Mayor Brody. I'll just be very brief. This year's operating budget has been challenging, as I feel like I'm here for the 3rd year in a row saying that. And there are some significant cost drivers which have been well outlined in the report. I also want to point out that in the report is information about the work that has been done to find efficiencies, cost cut across the organization, and identify areas and opportunities for revenue growth. And all that together has helped us manage our organization's base budget, and in particular, our same level of service budget, keeping it below 2% in line with CPI and our long-term financial management strategy. As usual, and as has been pointed out around the capital budget, our finance team has done an excellent job in presenting our budget in a clear and descriptive manner. I'll turn it over to Jerry, Mike, and the team, and of course we have individual subject matter experts as needed as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to note that this was on table. We have this kind of a table for option 1, 2, and 3. And I think staff's going to go through this in a few minutes. But this one that you just got on table actually shows numbers instead of just percentage increases.
That's correct.
So if you want to refer to it by actual numbers, there it is. So, Jerry, Mike, Melissa?
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff are here to answer any questions on the budget, but what we presented and recommended is option 1 with a tax increase of 5.86, which includes the 1% transfer to reserve. The 5.86 is lower than the 5-year amount that was approved last year at 6.05. As the CAO pointed out, there's numerous challenges that we did not anticipate when we did the 5-year plan, but the CAO said it was important that we kept to the 5-year plan, so we did, staff did look for efficiencies and revenue opportunities. And so staff can, we can go to the option page, which is on your FIN 189, and walk through that or any questions that council may have.
Yeah, please start us off by telling us the difference between, basic difference between options 1, 2, and 3.
Thank you, Your Worship. Option 1 is everything that we're approving, which is the same level of service, the 1%, and senior government increases. The difference is the additional level increases that we've recommended. Option 1 includes 1 manager Indigenous relations, 2 fire prevention captains, which are being recommended because in accordance with the Fire Safety Act, a traffic technician to help us manage with some of the issues with Bill 16, 1 engineering tech also to deal with Bill 44 and 16, and then phase in of 8 staff for the affordable or the housing office as the housing accelerator funds are, those were only received as one-time funding, so we're doing as a 4-year phase-in. And the other items, of course, are we're approving or recommending 6 RCMP officer and 2 municipal employees to assist the RCMP. Option 2 would add to the request. That would include an additional 4 RCMP officers and 4 municipal employees, plus 2 fire prevention captains. Option 3 would include everything in option 2, but no rate stabilization.
Okay. Was there anything else you wanted to tell us, or just go to questions?
We can go to questions, but the reason why staff recommended option 1 was a balance for the community safety aspect, but also we're quite cognizant with the increases from Metrovan on the utility increase. So we thought this was a responsible way of keeping the increases low, but still delivering the enhanced levels of service to the community.
All right, Councilor McNulty.
Yeah, thanks very much, Your Worship. I have a question and I'll make a comment. The actual tax increase to keep the same level of service is 1.99, is it not?
Through Your Worship, to Councilor McNulty, that is correct.
Okay, that is great. Thank you, Worship. Now, I'm going to be supporting this budget, and I'm going to get right to it. It's about our city and the quality. It's a quality of life budget, to be quite frank with you, in very, very difficult times and increasing costs. And it's, to me, it's about people. As Mr. Chong said, it's a balance on it, and it's a maintenance budget, but it's a community safety budget. You know, 49.26 cents of every dollar goes to community safety. He outlined we have RCMP, fire, e-com was up 13% approximately. We've got traffic cameras, et cetera. So having that all in the budget is, staff have done a great job, and I thank you for it. It's commendable to keep things at the level. How much is, a question here, Your Worship, in terms of other levels of government and downloading to us? How much was that? Was that about 0.69? It doesn't sound like much, but it is significant. Is it not, if it were removed?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, it is indeed 0.69%, and on the handout, that works out to 2.1 million.
Now, that's a significant amount of money we can do that. How much have we lost from the casino? At one time, we had the grand old years where it was about 24 million a year. Are we down to about half of that now?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, we're budgeting approximately 11.5 million this year. At the heyday, we were a lot higher, but due to...
So that's about 48% of what we used to get, half. We used to get 24, 11.8 out of 24 would be about 47 or 48, I would think quickly. No, you've done a great job, and I appreciate you bringing out the fact that our efforts in housing is really second to none, and also childcare that we're doing, and that's in this budget. And we've got to get moving on that. Given I sit on the housing committee of Metro, and we're doing giant steps forward, very, very much so compared to others, and what we're trying to do with housing an authority and getting going. I'm not patting us on the back. We have such a long, long way to go, but at least we're going the right direction. And with what we just passed, Your Worship, in terms of the capital and things like having the library and hopefully 25 more pickleball courts down the road for Councillor Heed, and I don't mean to jest, but we are doing, it's a people budget, and it's about living in Richmond, and this is what I think a lot of people leave that night. So staff, thank you very much for a good job.
Councillor Heed.
Thank you, Mayor. A little bit of sarcasm. Maybe the extra police officers are going to police the pickleball courts, but let me get back to what we're here for. And I'm going to start off with one question, then I just have a few comments to make. How much do we have in the rate stabilization fund? Because we're taking, what, $2 million out to limit this to 5.86, is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, on your FIN 185, we laid out the rate stabilization. As at October, there was 16.9 million. In the next budget, we're looking at the one-time of 2.6. We're proposing 2 million to use to bring the tax increase down in this budget. Also, a couple of items for one-time capital costs as part of this additional level would be funded from there. And then there 2.3 million for a capital project. The red mist replacement is going to be utilized. So we project that if this budget is approved and the funding is used, there'd be a 9.6 million remaining. We usually, what we do at the end of every year, any surplus from the city is then transferred to this rate stabilization to ensure that the money is then used by council for various things such as rate reduction.
Based on where we are right now, and for example, Vancouver is predicting a 5.5 increase in 2025, where would we be? Would we be within the mean of the Metro Vancouver area, or would we be above or below?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, I'm not, I believe we're one of the first or earlier ones to bring the budget forward, but I know Vancouver has proposed a 5.5%. I know Coquitlam is in the, I believe in the 6th, and I think it was Port Moody almost, I'm going to say, very high, beyond 6. So this is a very low budget
Well, good.
relative.
I just hate to see us above Vancouver. Certainly would be. But then let me just make a few comments here. You know, labor costs are a significant driving factor here. We've settled all of our, well, about to settle all of our union contracts. We can understand that, and to give them what most likely they certainly deserve. I can tell you the RCMP, I am absolutely supportive of the additional resources required there. I know we count a lot on the RCMP, and to carry on with what Councillor McNulty was saying, this is about people here in Richmond and taking care of people in Richmond. So certainly the members for the RCMP and the civilian staff for the RCMP are certainly supported from my point of view. E-com, we tried to certainly limit e-com, and I think at the end of the day, the advocacy we had to try and limit it, Mayor, I think we did the best we could of serving on that e-com board, so we don't have a more of an impact on that, and I've certainly had discussions with staff on that. I don't know if we can get it down to 5.5, and I certainly don't see anywhere where I'd want to see some cuts in order to do it. You know, that's why I asked a question regarding the rate stabilization fund. But I can tell you right now, I support where we are right now. And if we could sharpen the pencil a bit, fine. But other than that, thank you.
Yeah, the thing you've got to keep in mind is when you talk about Vancouver, it's got to be apples to apples, and we're adding in that 1%. So it's actually 4.86% plus the 1%. So that makes a vital difference, as responsible as I think it is. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would agree with that. I think we do keep our taxes low. Our percent on top of last year's taxes is far less of an increase than even the same increase on Vancouver's taxes. People in Vancouver pay a lot more taxes than we do. And part of that's because some of the infrastructure work that we've done over the years, we're able to keep things lower. So the RCMP asked for option 2, and we've heard from several community groups about their concerns around safety, police responsiveness, sensitivity to cultural and situational needs. So how did, and certainly you would have worked with the RCMP to, you know, massage out their budget. What do they need? And like, wasn't that their minimum, the original ask with the additional 8 people? Because it seems to me we're also, you know, we're putting in some more traffic cameras, we're investing in the infrastructure. So don't we need those people to help operate it and to be able to then move the cases through so that they actually get to court in a reasonable length of time? Otherwise, like, everything just falls apart anyway, and don't, like, are we missing the point if we don't staff correctly for the RCMP?
Through the chair, I believe.
Through the chair, the OIC is, the acting OIC is here to address that issue.
And I'm not trying to pit you guys against each other. I'm just trying to understand, like, you know, I know you're on a tight ship. We want to be as responsible to the taxpayer as possible. We also want our community as safe as possible. And we want, you know, justice to happen. So is it able to happen if we don't hire the right number of people and if we're sort of piecemealing a bit of equipment here and not enough people there?
Thank you. So through the chair, Councillor Lowe, our first initial request, our only request that we made was based on a lot of research and analysis that we've made. It was the lowest request that we've made. If we do not get the amount of members or municipal employee that we have requested in our ask for this financial, we will have to return and go and make some more research. could easily result in differences in service delivery. And we will have to make that determination whenever we hear what council has decided for us, for
Okay.
numbers.
And if we were to approve it, realistically, how long does it take to get the RCMP officers in place? Like, they're not gonna obviously arrive January 1st, so like their full number doesn't end up as the 2025 expenditure. So like, how long does it take to staff up those positions?
Correct. So it will take in approximately between 12 to 18 months to actually have these bodies in place.
Okay, so if we were to approve the full complement, put it to the rate stabilization account, because we don't actually spend it, we would budget it out of it, and the money would go back into the rate stabilization account. So for next year, we would be square, essentially, and then we would take it into account the following year, especially if it takes up to 18 months to get some of the people that we need. Is that correct?
Through the chair. To Councillor Liu, yes, you're correct. Any surplus would then go to the rate stabilization, and then if there's resulting in requests next year or something required to reduce the tax increase, we would then use the rate stabilization fund.
Okay, and part of what our rate stabilization account does have a bit of a revolving effect to it, because we do approve a certain amount of people to get hired. They don't get hired January 1st. There is some savings every year, and that's sort of how it fleshes out and, it grows over the years. So, it's not unreasonable to move it this way.
Through your worship to Councillor Louis, but the rates, I guess the rate stabilization, the reason why we always recommend a conservative amount is because then in the following year, that has to be brought back into the budget, and we have to then tax the people. So the 2 million that we're bringing in this year will then come back into your base budget next year.
Yes, but then we'd be budgeting for bodies that we actually have here. Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair, a couple comments and questions. First, again, to echo what other people have said, I don't have any questions for the RCMP, unless you want to stay there, but it's up to the chair, I guess. First of all, I do want to just echo some comments about the way the report is laid out and the amount of effort and work that has been done to bring in a recommendation that is, probably higher than most people would like to see, truthfully. Nobody likes to see taxes, but actually, lower than I feared it might be, considering all the different things going on in the world, including the North Shore water treatment plant and other things. But, it's already been mentioned about maintaining the level of service, 1.99, and a couple other things. And it's just important, I think Councillor McNulty already mentioned it, to mention the things that we have no control over, like the 0.69, which is essentially a tax or a downloading of government to us and increases that we have to pay. So when it comes to things like the operational budget impact that council has made decisions that it results in, it's quite a small amount, like 0.12. So I think it's just important for the public to realize that council and staff over the last year have been, in my mind, relatively reasonable. And the use of the rate stabilization fund is important, and that goes towards our long-term management strategy and the use of reserves, and that provides our ability to do that with the minus 0.65 to bring it down a little bit. So that's all good. Just with regard to policing and community safety, fire as well, which was just brought up, clearly I think we're all big supporters of community safety, and given, my background, I am also a big supporter of the police in particular and fire. But I couldn't help but notice on FIN 168 that the proportion, not on 168, sorry, I don't have the page in front of me, but it's figure 6, I believe. And the portion of the operating budget that's going towards community safety, I think it was about 40%. So combined fire and police. And just to double check, there is nothing else that contributes to that. We're not talking bylaws or anything else. or inspectors, that's police and fire, right?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, that's correct. It's on FIN 206 where we break down the 2025 tax dollar breakdown. It is 39.46 of every tax dollar goes towards police and fire. And that does not include the additional level request that is on the table right now.
Yeah, so my only comment there is, although, big supporter of community safety as we all are and everything else, I think it's a bit of a cautionary note that that's a big chunk of the budget, and I think we have to bear that in mind, and that's why I do support option 1 that's been presented, because it's a more of a phased approach, and I think allows us to have a little bit lower tax impact this year. So I do support that, and it's just an observation about the amount of money. Just as another observation that I'm sure others made too, on I think it's FIN 168, when we're talking about the property tax distribution and the municipal share of that, 49.7 versus others 50.3, and others, it explains in the report, but for the public are things like school and TransLink and things like that. So if you could just comment on what the trend has been for that, because essentially more money is going to other sources than to the city. And is that a long-term trend, or?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, in the last 3 years, the city's proportion compared to the other agencies has gone down. Whether it's through the province or TransLink, their proportion has gone up. So that's a correct statement. I don't know long-term what the outcome is. We don't get the requisitions from the other agencies till February or March, so we'll bring it forward when we do the tax billing and that.
Sure, and that's understandable. I just make the point because I think it's important for the public to realize that it's not all about the city of Richmond. We collect the money. And just lastly, on the rate stabilization account, just to clarify, I mean, that still is a tax-funded account. And as we've heard around the table before, there's only one taxpayer, so it does come from taxes we collect, correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, that's correct. It's from prior year's tax revenues and surpluses, but it's not just tax revenues. We've had surplus revenues from building permit and also vacancies, so any of that money goes towards the rate stabilization, so then it goes back towards the community to fund items or reduce taxes.
Yeah, again, it's a great use of basically a reserve account. I support that, of course. Just the one last point on that is this year, as Councillor Heed brought up, we are dipping into that substantially more than we have in previous years. So like on an average previous year would be 2, 3, 4 million or something, and we're quite a bit above that this year, fair to say?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, the past few years range from anywhere from 3.6 to 6.4. And the 6.4 million, that was the 1 year was the 4.7 million to offset the RCMP increase in unionization costs.
Okay, well, just one last comment through the chair then. I just think that and other reserves, it's a great reflection of the long-term financial management strategy, including the 1% that we put to reserves. And that's a fair point made through the chair. 5.86, actually 4.86. And I do support putting the 1% towards reserves as well. So thank you very much for a very well laid out report. And thanks for all the work that was done to keep this tax increase down to what is at least a relatively low figure compared to what I think other cities might face. So thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm in support of the option 1 and everything laid out. And the questions I had were somewhat answered there, so I'll just leave most of that behind. I guess one other comment around the police. I think with the just announced yesterday, the official changeover of the RCMP to Surrey Police Force, it's not like all the Surrey RCMP are now out of work. There's going to be a long-term transition there. So I think delaying some of the hiring of the other 4 workers a year later, I think might still play out well in our favor as those trained RCMP officers come available. So I do want to touch on one of the emerging organizational additional levels that's not recommended for funding for 2025. And it's on our page FIN 236. It's number 11 there. It's called Blackberry Management Natural Area Technician Position, Climate and Environment Coordinator 2, and Parks Labor, including a truck. So I've been bringing this up for 6 years or so, and before being on council as well. I've volunteered, adopted a park and trail in the city long ago. I've volunteered with organizations like the Green Teams of Canada, which do a fee for service in the city. It's volunteers. Typically, the city only partners with them for 2 events a year or so. I know the city's staff are looking into potential work with Youth Climate Corp, which could potentially hire people that will do the work. But what this item is, this would be city staff, 2 new positions that I think are essential, I think should be recommended for funding. In a moment, I'm going to make amendment requests that this be brought into the budget and have a 0.17 tax impact, or $534,431 impact. Unfortunately, this is the way this has come back to us. It didn't come at a GP. We couldn't debate it. We couldn't look at different options. We're presented with this one kind of package. It's not exactly what I was anticipating until we got the package, and that's kind of what we got. So I'm thinking this is worth doing now and not delaying it. We just approved the 5-year plan, which also didn't include projects or trucks and equipment and stuff to do this kind of work. So if it doesn't get approved here, it kind of dies. And once again, we're without work happening in our parks, on our boulevards, on our multi-use pathways, along our dikes, along our sidewalks, along our street trees. And as we're going through the OCP process coming up, all those confirmed environmental sensitive areas. I really value that this is requested by both Parks, Rec and Culture and Engineering and Public Works, because it's sites that are responsible of both of those organizations that need to be addressed. You can take me to any block, any street, any park, and I will find blackberry, I will find English ivy, choking trees, I'll find knotweed that's been sprayed and treated many times and it's still there. We clearly need a new method. Flail mowing is not working. We need on-the-ground staff that do actual stewardship work to actually see these projects through and prioritize certain areas. I was just walking with a large group through the Richmond Nature Park, and it floors me that after working there 20 years ago, the blackberry is expanding into areas where it's never been before. That's going to be a giant wasted park when it becomes all blackberry decades from now. But that's the process, that's where it's going. And you can't remove these things and keep the native plants unless you do it by hand. And that's partly what these 2 staff are going to initiate. And I think getting them on the ground, getting them to set the priorities is essential to get other contracted work, to actually confirm our ESAs and actually do what's needed on these sites. So at this point, I'm going to call that we make an amendment. I'll look for a seconder to add item number 11 into the operating budget.
All right.
I'll second that if no one else did.
No. That motion has not been made. We'll come back to you on that one. Councillor Howe.
Yes, Your Worship. I have 2 questions. FIN 163, staff point out that the community safety portion of the budget was be almost 54%. So is this the highest in our record in terms of percentage? That, we have about 54% going to community safety.
Through the chair, we don't have past records, but every year, community safety is probably increasing at a faster rate than city services.
Right, so I think that if that's the case, I think we have to look into what will be the implication in the future, right? You just keep growing like that in a faster rate, that could be, that could bring problems in the future. Now, and going back to the options, I again have a question. Staff gave us the 3 options, but I think actually we may have an option 4 In option 1 and 2, staff recommend that we use rate stabilization fund for 0.65%. Now, assuming that if we increased it to 0.85%, what will be the impact on the tax rates?
Through the chair, obviously then the tax increase would be 5.66. But staff are also, as I mentioned, the impact in the following year that instead of the 2 million, the 2.2 is there. The number would then come back into the budget next year. And then staff and council will have to deal with the tax increase next year. So that's why we recommended 2 million.
Yeah, but if we go to page, the other page, oh, I lost it, on the race stabilization fund reserve, I think we are still very solid. I mean, even if we deducted the portion for the 2025 utilization, we still have a very solid amount. I couldn't find it now.
It's a table through the chair to Councillor Howe. It's table 15. Question is in 185.
Yeah, right, okay. Yep, yeah.
Yes, the question isn't about the amount, it's on the impact. And we've laid out on FIN 191, the 5-year plan. So for 2026, taking into account the 2 million being used this year, we would have a projected budget of 4.5%. By putting in more amount or a bigger rate stabilization in 2025, that 4.5% is going to increase. It's going to be higher next year. So you're just pushing the problem down the road, even though you're achieving some reduction this year, but then next year we're going to have to deal with it. And as you've seen, the RCMP requests are there that they're going to follow up with, and there could be other requests. We don't know what's going to happen down the road. Obviously with the economy and the GDP, a new president in the United States imposing tariffs, so inflation could arise, a natural progression from tariffs, which then would increase some of our costs, whether supplies, materials, as we've seen in the past. So we're just trying to be proactive and also plan cognizant of those things.
Yep. Okay, yep. I would accept your comments for now, but I always feel that rate stabilization fund actually is over-taxation in the previous years, right? Because we got a surplus, and then we got surplus and put it into the reserve. But the surplus is actually over-taxation.
Through the chair to Councillor Howe, it is I wouldn't say it's over-taxation because it's just some of the services or the cost didn't arise as the acting OIC mentioned about the resources. But then what we do is we take that surplus and then reduce this year's taxes. So we are bringing it back and benefiting the taxpayers. It's not like we're not using it towards any, whether it's services or capital projects. All the money is accounted for and it's utilized for Richmond taxpayers.
Okay, good.
Councillor Day has a question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So maybe you could, Mr. Chong, could you explain to the general public, on one hand, we're taking a little over $2 million from the rate stabilization fund to bring down the tax increase by, I think it was 0.65%. But then on the other hand, we're taxing the taxpayers 1% in addition of the 5.86%. 1% is going into reserves. And so what is the rationale for that?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, I'll start with the 1%. I mean, the 1% transfer to reserve results in an additional $3 million and change to the capital building infrastructure reserve. That is a cheaper form of financing than going out to borrow. If you look at what's happened in the past years where interest rates have gone up, it wouldn't be a good time to finance something like the Works Yard project at 200+ million. This way, we were able to finance it internally and save money. And when we do borrow, we do it strategically and look at the rates when we finance or when council approved the Steveston Community Center. We got it at a fairly low rate, 4% and change. And at that time, even the interest rates went up. So then the money we obtained from the financing, we're able to invest it because it wasn't required at that time. So it was almost cost neutral where we actually benefited from that financing. In respect of the rate stabilization, as I've discussed, it is surpluses from prior years. But again, we do not use that. We use that surplus then to bring down the rate, either the tax rate, or we fund projects, or we stabilize things that aren't recurring. As an example I mentioned was the RCMP unionization. If we did not have that rate stabilization, there would have been probably a 1 or 2% tax increase just from that year. So council's always been able to use the rate stabilization to smooth out the tax increases for residents.
Thank you. And so option 1 is 5.86%, 1% of which will go to reserves. And that still allows us to have an Indigenous manager, 8 staff for the housing office, 6 RCMP, 2 fire captains, so many people, traffic engineer. Is it safe to assume that if we go with option 1, we will be able to maintain what has been quite impressive for many years, either the lowest or the second lowest crime rate in Metro Vancouver?
I don't know that our finance staff can comment on that, but the notion is that we will stay as a relatively safe community.
Yeah, I just wondered if, we did hear from, safety personnel earlier. I feel that if we maintain what we have and add these extra officers, that we should be able to maintain that high rating as a safe community. So thank you very much.
All right. My suggestion is, I realize there may be an amendment coming or two or something. Let's have a motion as written, and then we can do any changes by way of amendment. So it's moved and seconded the way it is. Councillor Wolf, you want to make an amendment?
Yes, my motion for amendment would be to add the item 11 on page 236, which is the Blackberry management item, to the operating budget.
Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
All right, it's moved and seconded. I think we fully discussed it. Councillor Galanders, you have a question. Is it on the amendment?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank Councillor Wolf for finding that and for bringing attention to it. And I think it's a small, relatively small item, but I think it's going to have a really big impact on our incredibly beautiful and ecologically diverse city. We're so proud of our parks, and we're so proud of our garden city, and that we're on the Pacific Flyway and all of our migratory birds and wildlife. That I think that doing this and seeing how it goes could make a real big difference for Richmond. And so I hope that everybody will support it to help control our invasive species in a more effective way.
Councillor Day has a question. This is on
Yeah,
the amendment. On the amendment.
On the amendment, is it the mover of the amendment that this money would come from the rate stabilization fund?
I believe that's the nature of it. Councillor Wolf, what did you have in mind?
I thought it would be in the just operating budget, and then if it didn't pass, then I thought I would bring it up during the next item, the one-time expenditures, and that's all from the rate stabilization account. But I'm happy to do that first.
Okay, so you're, what I hear you saying is we just add it to the percentage rate. Add it to the amount.
That was my initial thought, unless Councillor Day would call for something different.
I think it should come from rate stabilization. I don't think we should increase the tax rate from where it is at 5.86.
Okay, and I'll make a friendly amendment if Councillor Glanders supports the amendment for seconding it.
All right, so it's from rate stabilization account.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to say my thinking on it. I'm not approving 1 cent more. Just that simple. Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair, that's my inclination as well. The tax increase is high enough, so I'm reluctant to, even though the work is good. But I have a question for staff. Taking it from the rate stabilization fund is fine, but there's a budget impact, right, on the long term. We're adding staff. So it's not for free, or it's not just one-time paying out of the rate stabilization fund. There's an ongoing cost, correct?
To the chair, to Councillor Hobbs, yes, because this also includes, it's 2 positions, so it'll be an ongoing funding impact. So you could use rate stabilization for 1 year, but then it'll be you have to bring it into the base budget.
Okay, so just to wrap up, I'm not going to support it because I don't support adding anything to the increase that we have. But the work is important, I agree with that. So I would look forward to having a discussion like at more length at the right committee for that. Thank you.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Worship. For this particular program, the Blackberry Management, that's Richmond-owned spaces. Is that correct?
To the chair, I believe it would be Richmond spaces, but.
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, it would be a combination of Richmond-owned spaces and right-of-ways as well. But yes, city-owned and land as well as parks.
Okay. Do we need a bigger approach to Blackberry management? Like if I drive down Highway 99, there's like oceans of blackberries. So like while this has a lot of merit, it needs to be on a much bigger scale to really get ahead of, if we're going to get ahead of it at any point, we actually have to have some way of dealing with it on private property.
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, if we were to endorse a program, it would be staff's recommendation that it would be annual funding, similar to the other invasive species capital, because it's very difficult to manage blackberry over 1 year or one-time event. You're looking at typical sites that are about 3 years of just monitoring once the proper restoration activities are in place.
Okay, but what happens on like these big swaths of land that are covered in blackberries that are privately owned? Like, don't we need a more comprehensive program that dovetails how it's dealt with on private property?
Through the chair to Councillor, that's correct. We would be working with adjacent landowners through a program in advance of that would look at working with our bylaws as well as education and stewardship with local neighbors in the community adjacent to city-owned properties.
How much do we otherwise budget for invasive species?
To you, Mr. Chair, currently I have about $300,000 each year through the capital funding. But because blackberry affects different landowners in different departments, there are different budgets that are incorporated. Typically for blackberry each year, it's about $145,000 that staff allocate for different complaints or restoration works.
Councillor Heed.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Unfortunately, I'm not going to support the amendment, but I can tell you blackberry management is a very important thing, and I think we've got to find efficiencies within our public works in order to do this. Whether we move this to part of a discussion with the Public Works Committee to find those, if possible, those efficiencies so we can fund the blackberry management, I think is the prudent approach at this particular time versus increasing certainly the operating budget and not taking it out of rate stabilization.
Councillor McNulty.
I'll just be quick here on this one. I'd like to support it. To be honest with you, I don't know enough about it, and I appreciate Councillor Wolf's indulgent on this, and I agree with Councillor Hobbs. I think we need to define the issue, look at the approach, and what do we need to do it and make it, as Councillor Liu also alluded to, a comprehensive thing, and put it into wherever we're doing it, and what do we need to deal with? How big an issue is it? And if we only put $300,000 this year, let's squeeze some things to see how we're going to do it. to me, it appears to me, we need some specialized people. And the other thing is, please look at the rate stabilization as a blessing. That has been the hard work of many councils before and staff that have put that money away so that we can have it. It just didn't appear and sit there. So I just throw that out. So I can't support it at this time, but I'd like to have a referral to staff to come up with a 1-page or 2-page paper and program so that we can understand it and then we can address it more formally as opposed to raising taxes on it.
Yeah, my thinking was the same. After we finish all this operating budget, we could have a
Make that referral
referral.
to staff
And
for
we'll get back to that.
comprehensive program to see
And
what.
go
where we're-
back through parks.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councillor Liu. No, Councillor Liu, was there something more? Go ahead,
Yeah, I'd like to,
on the amendment.
no, sorry.
Okay, so we're voting on the amendment to add one-time rate stabilization money of $534 for Blackberry management. All those in favor? Those opposed? So it's Councillor McNulty, Liu, Au, Hobbs, Councillor Heed, the mayor, and I assume that Councillor Day is opposed and Councillor Galanders is in favor. So it is defeated. So we'll come back to that notion of a referral in due course. Councillor, so we're back on the main motion. Councillor Au.
Yes, Your Worship, I want to move an amendment, option 4, which I mentioned before. Perhaps, we should use more of the rate stabilization fund to reduce the increase to 5.55%.
So how much is that?
5.55.
So you want to reduce this by, what's that, 30.31?
Yes.
Reduce, is that seconded? There is no seconder, so it fails. Anybody else? Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Worship. I move that we adopt option to increase emerging organizational additional levels and put 725,000 of that from the rate stabilization account, and that'll put us to 5.99%.
That's contrary to what's on the floor, so we'll take your viewpoint on it, but you'd have to defeat what's on the floor, and then we have a new one, which is option 2. Okay. Any other comments? So we'll call the question on option 1 and then the 5-year plan. All those in favor? Those opposed? I'm not seeing anybody online. Councillor Galanders, are you in favor of this? Just hold on. Are you?
Of option 1 for the budget?
Yes, option 1.
I am in favor, thank you.
Okay. And I'll take it Councillor Day is in favor because I haven't heard from her. So all those opposed, Councillor Au, Councillor Wolf, Councillor Liu, that is carried. Then the idea of a referral, I'm suggesting based on what Councillor McNulty and some of the others have said, that we make a referral to staff for strategies and options for more blackberry and other invasive species management and report back through Parks, Rec, and Cultural Services Committee. Okay, so moved, second. Okay. Discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Okay, that brings us to one-time expenditures. 237. 237, okay. So the one-time expenditures, what do you want to tell us about that? I see we've got the rate stabilization all specified there. And
Yes, Mr. Chair, on FIN 239, again, the table on the rate stabilization, and just comment on these items that have been recommended by staff. These were all most of these items were previously brought forward to council for endorsement to be brought forward to the budget process. And some of the other items are ongoing items such as recreation fee subsidy program, the volunteer management strategy update.
Okay, someone want to move it? Moved and seconded. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to support these. These are critical to my comments earlier about people, especially when the events, community events plan is in here for almost $1 million, and the recreation fee subsidy program is in here for 116,000. These actually should be in the budget, to be quite. I've been saying it for years, that these kinds of things, especially with the RFSP, should be in our budget. Much of this, and I do definitely support the fire vehicle and equipment reserved for the firemen, because obviously we're behind and we need to get going, and the others are straightforward. But also I'm really happy, and Councillor Liu and I pushed this forward with the lifeguard subsidy program. I think that's probably one of the few, correct me if I'm wrong, in the whole Lower Mainland, so that it's only $45,000, but try to find a lifeguard today to go out and look after our people in our pools and what have you. So I think a question I had though is the grants intake application system, $75,000. Is that a person that we're going to do that? Because I thought we had a pretty good grant intake application system and replacement, et cetera.
It's a hard
Or
one.
is that a hard drive?
Through your
Not a
chair,
robot.
No, through the chair to Councillor McNulty. No, it's actually a new system. And so the existing system is actually end of life, and it is something that was developed internally many years ago. So this essentially is going to market and bringing forward a new system that's going to be managing the grants program.
Is it going to make it simple so that even I could fill it out?
Oh, not that simple.
Oh, not that simple? Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, Councillor Heath.
Yes, quickly, I'm certainly going to vote in favor of this, but I just want to point out one thing that's been a bit of a pet peeve of mine, and that's the Richmond Celebrates FIFA, the $200,000. And I've been opposed to this, but since it's part of the one-time expenditures, as I said, we're not always happy, we don't always get what we want, but I'll support this.
All right, I'm going to call the question then on the one time. All those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried. Then we have the Lulu Island Energy Company budget. Alan Polskolka, Helen Chow, et cetera. So what would you like you to tell us about this?
Mr. Chair, we don't have anything to add to the report, but we are available to answer any questions.
So this will enable the rates to stay at or below market?
That's correct.
All right. Any, Councillor Hobbs?
Thanks, and through the chair, I'll be supporting it. Thanks to the report. Just want to point out the one comment, which I think is really remarkable about this, is that it's self-sustaining and financially self-sustaining as a subsidiary, and I think that's really good. So thank you.
All right, someone want to move it? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Someone move adjournment. Okay, so for the public, all that goes to council next week. I'm going to call the closed